How's everybody doing? So, Dusty, she's pretty much watched me build this whole ferry over the summer. She would watch me from her little perch there and jump up every morning on the desk just before I started. So she's the only one that's really witnessed this build other than what I reviewed on camera or captured on camera. And I've done my best to try to capture as much of this as I could during the time and in the moment, because there were moments on this ferry where I wanted to throw it out the window. Believe me, this, like when you take on a model like this, for those of you that have done this sort of thing or are doing it now, like you'll know, like you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into challenges. It feels really awesome when you get near the end, and you forget about all the sore spots and the problems that you had to solve along the way. But that's part of the reward, though. Like, this is the reward. This is what you get for all your determination and hard work and perseverance. And yeah, it is sometimes hard work. Yeah, there's, excuse me, there's a lot of fun and passion in a model like this as well. But, you know, a model that you're going to be satisfied with will never come easy. They'll fight you. It's like a personal battle. I want to just talk a little bit about this first rather than go into a long pedantic build, because I think I've covered mostly everything, like all the processes, you know, on the ferry. I didn't cover all of the bridge, like standing up the sides and building the front angled face of it like that, but it's pretty basic, really, like basic construction as I've shown. But a couple of things I want to point out following this intro that I think is interesting, like the wipers. I scratch built the wipers because they're larger commercial style, even though they're 187 scale. 187 scale locomotive or automotive are way too small. They would never hold up to the gale force winds and the larger needs of wipers on nautical windows like this. A few other things I would like to touch on, and before I go any further, I just want to turn the lights on, but the ambient light is still bright, so they won't show like they will on the layout, which I'll show on the Carrier Princess Final, which is a couple episodes away now. But you can see that the upper spot here that I scratch built all these lights, like even these bezels are scratch built. Like all the lights are, like the light bezels as well. And the actual Carrier Princess top light like that was a warm yellow white like that, and the side ones were newer LEDs. Ships like this over their lifespan get refitted quite a bit. Like this ship was probably refitted probably a dozen times. Like originally when it was commissioned by Canadian Pacific, there was no catwalk on here. This was added later when it was changed ownership to Coastal Intermodal C-SPAN, and then it became just C-SPAN ferries when Washington Corp took over, I think, just before that, and then the company changed names again or whatever. But the bridge really is sort of the candle on the cake. And I went a little bit to town on the details inside, which I'll show following this, which is why, like you can't see it now, but I'll show the inside of it. And I did some of the basic details on it. And I also did the navigation scope. I lit that up as well. So I will cover one more episode after this. I'll be covering some of the lighting just to show how I did some of this. Like you can see this basically nav cabinet with cylinder. So this is the starboard right green. Okay, there's also lights along the deck, like these all-weather light bezels that light up the deck and the side of the ship. Of course, the spotlights that light up, like these are really bright. They light up the whole deck of the ferry as well. The inside of the cab is lit, but it's turned down a bit, but looks much better when it's under darker ambient light on the layout. You can see the port red nav light cabinet there. Like these are really bright when the light goes down. Then there is some light down by the deck here, the passenger deck, some soft ambient light that comes out too. You can see some of the other light bezels along there. But the bridge itself is sort of, well, it's the candle on the cake, right? And I tried to stay as faithful as I could to the prototype, which I think I did. And one of the challenges, like you'll see maybe in some of the clips, like sometimes I'll show processes of partway through the build. Like sometimes people say, oh, why is there a little tape line or paint or, you know, but that's just in the moment. Like, but these windows were quite challenging to build, and they have full glazing in behind them. You can see the rain lips on them. And when they were masked off and painted, that was a bit of a process. I painted the inside of the bridge first, and then I masked the inside of the windows, and then sprayed the outside like I did the main structure, and then peeled the tape off, and then installed the window glazing, and then the wipers. And then I had to make sure that the window glazing wasn't so high in behind that I'd have to drill through those as well to put the pins or the wipers in, because they would pivot, like, you know. And then I think I showed how to do these doors, these flush window doors, out of clear acetate and tape. Just a couple things I want to show you just to wrap this up, okay? And then following this particular episode will be a little bit on the lighting, and then the Carrier Princess final, which she looks like on the layout, with some closing commentary, okay? How's everybody doing? So what I want to do is just take a few minutes to talk to you about masking tape, or maybe fine scale modeler's tape. So this is Tamiya tape right here, which is this right here. And then there's this tape here, which is called Kaizen tape. This is Tamiya. There's nothing on the inside, but it comes in a package, so you'll know it. You'll know it once you use it anyway. You can probably close your eyes and, well, I can tell by checking the adhesive on the back side. I can tell by the feel of it almost. So this tape here, this is called Kaizen tape. I've tried this. Like, this tape's okay. Personally, I wouldn't use it for doing a paint line for a couple of reasons. Well, I don't trust it. I've tried it and I get way more seepage than I would with Tamiya without clear coating. And if you put this down on tape and then you lift it up, it tends to leave glue, like adhesive, behind spots of it around. I've seen it, and the scary thing is it's transparent. You can't see it readily. You have to feel it, depending on the color of the paint. So if I laid this on this gray Tamiya, this is semi-gloss over this blue-gray. If I put this tape down on there and I lift it up after a few hours or whatever, I've had it where oh, what's that? There's adhesive stuck on there. And you got to use warm water with a cotton rag to get it off. You can't use IPA or any solvent. Well, you might be able to use a enamel solvent, but you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to put that on your paint finish. So this leaves glue behind. This is good for other purposes. Like, here's Tamiya, like if I was doing a paint line and then I wanted to block out more of it, like just say the paint line was, just say the model's this wood, this Tamiya tape is my paint line that I want to spray. I'd use this for the border to attach brown paper to, or something like other 3M or Scotch or Bright or whatever, right? But I'm not going to use it for the actual final line on the model. I'm going to use Tamiya. I've been using this for over 30 years, and there's no argument in my experience that it's the best fine scale modeler's tape there is. This stuff here, Kaizen, has a place for it, but I wouldn't use it as the primary finish tape for your masking of canopies or windows or, you know, paint lines. I want to talk about this in a second. So let's move that out of the way. So that leaves a bit of glue behind at times when you least expect it. Now there's this tape here. I've heard people mention it before, and they always argue, say, oh, it's cheaper and stuff like that. Well, maybe it is, depending where you buy it, but is that why you get it? Because it's cheaper? This will leave glue behind as well, and I'll show you why I don't like this tape. It's good for border tape. It's good for border masking. Once again, border masking, meaning if this is the tape line, this is the model, this is the Tamiya tape, and I want to run a piece to protect from overspray, right? I'm using Tamiya for my line, not this, right? You can if you want, but I'm not. I don't trust it. So, and the thing is with this tape, it has, like, compared to Tamiya, it has a kind of a papery like the way it tears like paper, right? Whereas Tamiya, it doesn't tear like that. Like look at, I can pull it from way back here and it doesn't tear that easily, right? It's more like it's a tougher and more flexible tape, okay? Really flexible, and I'll show you why that matters. So I've basically taped up all my windows, okay, on the command bridge, except for one. I was going to try to show you how to do that. I don't know if I'll be able to keep it in camera though, because I have to change angles like 39 times when I do it. So you can see, but I've done all these other windows, and the reason why I love this tape is because I can basically go like this. I can put a extra large piece in, and I can just take this is a piece of bamboo, and I can just like push it in, and it grabs. Like this is Tamiya paint, obviously, so this tape is, I think this tape was designed along with this paint, but it's just awesome tape, right? Like you can get it into creased areas like this and seal, and it just seals up, right? You minimize any paint bleed with just raw tape over paint, I think, better than any other tape. So let me just show you an example in closing here. So if you want to cut small pieces of tape, to me, you can just lay it on here all day long and then cut strips, cut your own strips, right? And then even when you lift it off, it doesn't lose its adhesive qualities. It actually keeps them really well, right? Okay. Now I got to get this tape into a tight spot here. So doing this on camera can be an exercise in futility, because it probably won't work on camera. But I'll show you why I love it so much. So I'm just going to get this tape in there, get it started. So watch, see, it's sort of an uneven surface, but if I get my bamboo stick in there, or even the tip of my tweezers, I can basically seal off that whole window without getting too fussy about the size of the piece of tape, see? And it wraps and flexes itself around beautifully and seals up. Look how it seals the windows. Like, it's just awesome, right? So now, just quickly, why didn't you paint this white first and then mask the outside with one big long strip here and here, and then just spray this all gray? Well, I'll tell you what, if I would have done that, you see how there's a flange? I modeled a flange on these windows, see? So that is the only surface I would have for tape if I laid tape over this. And this is nice and white, like a semi-gloss finish. And then when I start spraying in here, because I had to do a lot of spraying to get up into the corners, if I get any seepage at all, it's going to be a nightmare, okay? Dark gray like that over top of white, not fun, right? That is why. Whereas this way, this is all done. I'll mask the top of this, and then I'm going to spray light gray to knock down the stark gray, and I'm going to chase it down with flat white and then semi-gloss white. And even if I do get any bleed, which will probably be highly unlikely, right? It'll be so easy to clean up with a wash on the inside rather than doing it the other way around. So you get a nice clean command bridge with a dark interior. And then what I'll do is I'll knock this tape out once that white is painted, and then I'll take a dark black marker, paint pen marker, and do these window sashes black. And then I'll pop in the glazing when it's all done, and she'll look sweet, okay? So Tamiya tape. These other tapes are good too, but if you're nervous about paint lines and residue on your model, do your finish work with Tamiya and then use this other tape in support and everything, okay? Cheers. So just want to briefly touch on these three components that I made. There's a few other ones that are already done. So you can see this is sort of the center console that I just built from a photograph that I found on the internet of the same period. It's not the exact boat. I think I mentioned earlier that I don't really have the luxury of photographs for the actual command bridge on the Carrier Princess, but I had a grainy one, so I got a kind of an idea. So I just built it on, you know, the sort of period. This is the sort of 70s period, and then it would be, of course, like originally like, and then it would have been upgraded, you know, every time the ship gets a refit. They probably had interim upgrades as well. Out of these three components, out of the helm there, and then the forward command, I guess you would call command station here with the thrusters, etc. on it. I really like this this scope, the way it turned out. I just sort of offset it a bit. And this would probably be like, you know, brightness, contrast, knobs, and then an adjustment here, a little cabinet underneath, and then, you know, probably for a moving map display or something, you know, for navigation, right? So these are just basic sort of details, but combined together, they, you know, they give you that impression when you look, you know, when you look inside, right, that, you know, it's a command bridge, okay? Okay, how's everybody doing? So what I want to do here is just talk to you about some of these final details for Carrier Princess, which I normally call model components, right, that make up the greater whole of the model. Now, before I just point out some of these details, I just want to mention something about my past as a model maker in the film industry. Like, people have asked about it. I don't like to go into it too much because, you know, my brand is about River Road and the building of it, and there are other people out there that have really good channels that, you know, talk about movie industry stuff. But I just want to show you this one model that I had the pleasure of working on. It was in the early 90s, and it was sort of a sad time in a way for model makers, because in the early 90s there was this transition of CGI, and it was sort of pushing out the traditional, you know, model per se for movie making. But during that time there was a bunch of shuttle movies being made. I can't remember what they were, because we would just get, like, we were contract model makers, so we would just get a model. Like, if there was a model of a shuttle, there'd be 4 models built, like a sort of full-size bay, couple of quarter scale, and then, you know, small full dimensional models for, you know, blue screen, etc. And I had the pleasure of working on a quarter scale model. Now, there'd be several people working on a model like that. Like, there'd be like maybe 5 model makers, and each one would get a task. Like, one would say, okay, so you build the roof of the model, you build the, you know, the command bridge section, you can build all, you know, all these details, but at quarter scale though, right? I'll show you a few photographs of the actual model, and then I'll carry on with this. But quarter scale, like, just to show you, would be like 3 inches on a quarter scale model, not 1/48, quarter scale. So 3 inches is 1 foot on the model. Whereas with this is HO, so 1/8 of an inch is a foot. On a quarter scale model for a movie, for example, is 3 inches is a foot. So every quarter inch is an inch on the movie model. Cool, eh? Like, it's such a cool scale. And I'll just show you a bunch of photos, well, just a few quickly before I carry on with this, okay? Yeah, so you can see the detail, the fidelity of detail that you can achieve on a quarter scale model. And what was interesting is I was tasked with many components on that model, but the one main one that I had a lot of fun with was the actual hatch. Okay, so the hatch was to be functional. I built the hinge out of brass and it was really, really cool. But what's really funny about that is that when they went to go shoot the model to bring the camera in to pan into the bay, it was in the way. So they took a crowbar and pried it off and they never even used it. You know, like imagine spending $7,000 just to build a hatch on a movie model and they tear it off and use it for an ice bucket at a wrap party. At the end, that's what they used it for. They filled it full of ice and put a couple bottles of champagne in it. So my shuttle hatch did get use, but didn't get much film time. But anyways, but models like that and models like this, I approach the same way by building components, and then you bring them all together. To make, the greater whole of the part, I guess, in this part, the command bridge. So you can see that this is pretty much done. I put glazing in here. I just used canopy glue or GAC 500. You can't see it, right? See how the glass is in there? Like, you can't see the glue. Okay, so it's really nice stuff. And I didn't have to glue the whole window. I just spots like each corner. I even did these side windows here. So when this is lit up, because it's dark, if you're going to light a model, it's probably best to paint the inside dark because the light's going to really, light things up. And you'll see the details better. If you're not going to light it up, then it's probably better to do, lighter parts or whatever. So that's this part, and then you can see the roof is almost there. I got a couple of minor things like the lights installed in the searchlight there, and then a couple things to trim up, but it basically sits on top and will be removable because I have to access it to actually install the lighting. And then I just want to show you a couple other details. So these are the details for the inside of the command bridge, right? So you have to decide like where to stop. Like you can see, initially I wasn't going to do anything, but I thought, well, if I light it up, I should do some details. So these are components, model components at HO scale that I decided to do. Like there's the command station here where you can see the thruster knobs there, right? So here's the helm. And the funny thing is I don't have photos of the actual carrier Princess, but I studied other periods, ferries of the same period. And the helm, like this part here, is further back for general navigation. And then when they got to port or in and out of port, they would just step forward where the windows are at the front to use the thrusters, to dock. That's how they did it. So, and then these are chart cabinets and counters. And then you can see I did a couple of scopes here, and then this one will be lit up. There's a piece of tape on there I'll peel off, which you'll see at the very end. And I put a green light or a regular LED in there just to kind of add a glow to it. Just for some extra detail to basically dress up the inside. And then you can see the one hole that I drilled for access for the light for the scope. And then there'll be an interior light, and there's holes in there which will go down through there, through here into the main superstructure, back to the dimmers and the power source, etc. Okay, and then just in closing, just want to show you these anchors. Oh yeah, and the wipers too. So these are the anchors which I'll put on last. These are model components as well. So don't want to put those on yet because I'm still rotating the model back and forth. I don't want to knock them off. And then this was an earlier anchor that I did. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this, but it wasn't the best anchor. So I just threw a tarp on it to cover up some of it. And then, maybe I'll put it on the deck by the crane like a spare one, or maybe they're just moving it from one port to another because there's a lot of space on the deck. And then just in closing, just want to show you some of these details. So these here, I'm not really sure what they are. They're sort of this orange, I don't know really. They're not a beacon. I've yet to find out what those are. They're on the port and starboard upper part of the superstructure. And then you can see here's some fire extinguishers that I used from a 1/35th scale, military modelers accessories. They were beer bottles or something in 1/35th scale, but in HO 187, they become little fire extinguishers, So just as I had mentioned from, HO to quarter scale, you can cross over parts if you change what they are, if they have the same shape and so on. And then these wipers I scratch built. Now they're a little bit larger because they're industrial sort of maritime, you know, for this particular command bridge, like they would be larger, right? Because these windows are quite large. So I scratched those because none of the HO scale ones would work. They're too small. So those will look really cool. So, and then of course there's the mast on the command bridge, which is fairly simple. There's not a whole lot to it, but it really sort of adds, you know, sort of the candle on the cake, as I'd mentioned earlier, which really makes the bridge, gives it that character and distinction, you know, the carrier princess and how unique she was, you know, like the command bridge. It was really, really like a beautiful command bridge on this ferry. It was one of the features of this ship that made me want to model her, okay?